how do we actually sift out the fighting against, which can also just look like a young tantrum in an adult man's power, like physically powerful body, versus that energy of the warrior who knows what he stands for and isn't willing to back down. To me, the difference is, how do you work with your anger? I really, really encourage my male clients to have, for a lot of them, a daily practice of expressing anger in a healthy, safe way. When the anger is in the shadow, it's not trustable. So either it's going to come out in these weird, messy ways, or it's not going to come out at all when it needs to. So I don't trust you to be able to show up. I mean, come on, what's sexier? Someone who is avoiding any conflict, or someone who knows what he wants and is willing to lean in and do what is needed to get it? Of course.
So we've got some rapid fire questions about male clients, which is specifically like, a lot of men feel scared of approaching a woman because they'll be perceived as creepy. What would you say to those men?
So what I always tell men is that
I'm Layla Martin. I'm your host of This Tantric Life. This podcast is for you to learn about and be able to use the incredibly powerful system of Tantra in your life. I have been teaching and studying classical and neo-Tantra for over 20 years. And when you apply that to sex, love, and relationships, as I love to do, you end up having conscious relationships, the deepest, most epic and magical sex, and the kind of intimacy that you get to be grateful for on your deathbed.
Hi, I'm Layla Martin, and welcome to This Tantric Life. I'm struggling with my dress today. It is ballooning everywhere, and it is not going to change. I'm so excited to have this conversation today with Starielle Hope, who is a relationship and intimacy coach who specializes in working with people who have been successful in their careers, but have struggled to find that same level of success in their romantic relationships. She guides them in clearing blocks to intimacy, revealing subconscious patterns that are keeping them from the sex and connections they want to experience, and develop the skills that will enable them to attract world-class partners. She has a decade of experience studying somatic modalities, internal family systems, sexuality, evolutionary psychology, communication techniques, masculine-feminine dynamics, and Tantra. She holistically teaches skills for deeper intimacy by addressing the emotional, physical, sexual, and spiritual planes to empower her clients to experience new depths of connection in their romantic relationships and broader communities. She's also a VITA Coaching graduate and a very dear friend of mine. So welcome to This Tantric Life, Starielle. I love that. To me, you are the intersection of sexy goddess, rock and roll, and like this razor sharp mental brilliance.
Oh.
And I was telling you, I wanted to kick off this podcast by talking about some of the ways that we met. And part of that is because I think when you do a lot of this work, right, and you're a VITA graduate and you've done so much other work as well to become your full self. And as you were saying, like, this is hard. Like, you have to face a lot of pain, a lot of challenges in order to come fully alive. And there are these moments, actually, your whole life starts to make it so worth it. I'd say at first, when you start doing the work, there's just little moments. There's like crumbs where you're like, aha, this is the right path. And then over time, when you keep doing the work, it's like your whole life starts to unfold as this playscape.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah. So I met you on a trip to Antarctica. And there were like 200 people on two boats, and we were crossing the Drake Passage. And we at first didn't go because the waves were going to be like 40 feet and everyone was terrified. And I remember Emily Fletcher being like, I'm having visions. The boat is going to sink to the bottom of the ocean floor. And my toddler Jasper is having these premonitions that we're all going to die. And me and Emily were like sharing a room. And they told us that if the waves went to 40 feet, they might strap us to our beds so that we wouldn't hurt ourselves getting knocked around by these crazy waves.
Yep.
And Emily was like, am I scaring you? And I was like, okay, right now we're still docked in Argentina, so I'm not that scared. But if you get off the boat because you're sure that we're all going to die and I'm strapped to this bed alone in 40-foot waves, I will be terrified, Emily, absolutely terrified. And the way that you and I got to know each other on that trip was actually, I was supposed to teach sex magic.
Mm-hmm.
And we were theorizing maybe this was the largest sex magic that would ever take place in Antarctica. Like, we don't know what the scientists do late at night, but like probably there weren't 200 of them. And so we were very excited. And my sex magic got canceled because they were worried about PR and implications and all of that. And there were people who were very upset. And for me, it changed. It actually healed something inside of me because I came of age teaching this work when it was like, not only did no one care about sex magic, but people actively were so uncomfortable by it that they just wanted it gone. And it was you and Brigitte, one of your very good friends, and your partners at the time, and a couple of others, where you were like, we came to Antarctica to do radical practices like sex magic. Like, how dare they deny us this like access to witchcraft? And I was like, oh, who are these people who like care so deeply about sex magic existing, having a right to exist? And so you healed my heart on that trip in the most beautiful way.
I'm so glad. I just remember crawling around on all fours that evening after we did more of an energetic breath practice and feeling so activated and animalistic and primal and just feeling so excited to have so many incredibly juicy women, including you, just roll around with and get fully into our juicy selves and realizing, you know, we are who we are.
Yes.
No matter what the boundaries are and what the level of comfort is.
Yeah.
There's always somewhere we can go.
Yeah, totally. And then fast forward, we connected on this trip to Joshua Tree, and I had been like communing in the desert. I think there was like LSD and ketamine involved. And I was like in full God consciousness oneness. And when I came out, we went to go get ready for a party. And the way that you put on your makeup forever changed me because it was like you were adorning yourself. I'll always remember you would like look at yourself, you would like take yourself in the mirror, and then you would do something like very intentionally. It was like every act, every color, every part of your face that you touched, it was like adornment is the word that I would use. Like you were adorning the goddess herself with art that brought out her beauty. And you would like step back and like dance a little bit and then move back in and then step back and dance and like feel yourself. And I was like, oh, this is the way to get ready for a party. And I have like channeled you since then. When I get ready, I'm like, let's Starielle this.
Oh, I love that so much. And I think you're underplaying it just a little bit because I'm pretty sure I was doing part of my makeup and then a song I really liked would come on and I would go into a full sensual dance routine, utilizing the walls of the bathroom and the counter and somehow end up on my knees on the tile. And then I'm back up. Oh, we have to get ready for this party again. So that was a really fun way to get ready.
And I said, look, these are the two stories I want to tell. And you were like, well, what about the time that I put you in lingerie while everyone did light language around you?
This one was also pretty good.
Would you like to share that one?
So at your birthday, I was so excited to give you this really beautiful outfit that I had found it was this gorgeous lingerie that was black and purple. And to me, it just screamed Layla. And you happen to be wearing this totally different outfit. And a couple of friends and we brought you into this back room and we started slowly peeling off the outfit that you were wearing and putting you into this lingerie. And a few different people just came out of the woodwork. And I think someone started playing an instrument and someone started singing light language. And I think Emily came and was saying a whole prayer over us. And it was one of the most just exquisite examples of synchronicity and also the innate magnetism of a special moment where people just somehow felt us and came in to be a part of it. And it was such an amazing opportunity to really celebrate you and love on you on your birthday. And I have this image of everyone flocking in and directing their creative abilities all around you to celebrate you and worship you in the most delicious way.
I'm here to let you know that if you want to stay connected to my teachings and if you want to support this podcast, the best way to do it is to sign up for my email list. Email list sounds old school, and yet it is where I share my most intimate teachings, the path, process, heartbreak, and triumph of my life, and so much of the content that I make for you on a regular basis. So the way you get on the email list is by heading over to laylamartin.com, put your email address into any of the boxes. You can also sign up for cool practices like sex magic or energy orgasm, totally free. Heading on over to laylamartin.com, signing up with your email address. This supports the podcast. It supports this entire work and is the number one way for you to receive the highest teachings of this path.
Well, thank you for sharing these stories. And as I said, like one of the reasons I wanted to speak to this is because when people do this work, it's like, yes, I want you to be this majestic goddess. Like, yes, I want you to commune with all of the mystical powers of the universe, but I really want you to play. You know, it's like when you turn on your eros and your energy and your magic, like one of the great gifts is that you start to play. Like getting ready for a party becomes pure play. Like adorning your friend at her birthday becomes pure play. And everyone's going to play in different colors and with different flavors. But this is part of my prayer for the world, is that we heal our trauma to the degree that we start to really play again. Because I think that's what nourishes our hearts and our souls over a lifetime. And you're just one of my friends that I feel like has always embodied that level of play. And it's such a treat when you find someone where you're like, oh, this person has done the work so that they can actually play at this level.
It's deeply meaningful to me to hear that reflection, because it's something I struggled with so much growing up. I was always the serious one, very much so. And it's only been in the last maybe 5 or 6 years. I started my personal growth path about 12 years ago. The first few years was a lot of clearing. And there's still a lot of clearing, but being able to see those glimpses in the play and to have these reflections from people I have in my life now, it helps me so much to reflect on truly how far I've come, and all those times puking in a bucket, all those times on the bathroom floor, all those times getting triggered when I know I shouldn't be in this moment, all those times when I'm like, we're back here on this thing. Didn't I heal this thing? How are we here again? And to stay with it and be able to find that play and that creativity and that sensuality on the other side. Oh, it's just, no one ever told me growing up that everything I wanted most, more confidence, more creativity, more clarity of my own internal guidance, that all of that was waiting for me on the other side of a big, deep emotional process. Grieving, anger, and not just like, oh, crying, but like on the floor, on my knees, wailing, puking. I had no idea.
No, I still don't think people know. And I think we tend to think of play, we mix it with the cultural understanding of entertainment, which is distraction, right? Like I'm in pain, so I'm going to entertain myself, or I'm in pain, so I'm going to try and distract myself. But like true play to me is one of the highest forms of the universe, and it's the opposite of trauma. And so like when you say I was so serious when I was young, me too. Like I was always the serious one, but what I really was sad. What I really was just like drowning in my complex PTSD. And when I wasn't confident, it was because I had so much heaviness inside of me. It was making me super self-conscious. I just felt bad inside. And so I couldn't have this like, who cares what I say? Who cares what anyone else thinks of what I say? I'm just going to be myself. That came exactly as you're saying, after so much healing, so much trauma integration, and so much willingness to face myself. That really deep play was on the other side of it. Like really being able to be at a party, throw a party, love a party. Like, it's not just, oh, who cares parties. It's actually like, no, how we want to celebrate life, which is such an important dimension of just, I think, having been grateful for this experience.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I just didn't have the energy.
Yeah.
I was depressed. I was heavy. I was exhausted all the time.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was who I was.
I'm just going to say that this dress is going to make me feel like a total Oompa Loompa. And I don't think there's any solving it. We already had the stylist come and try and like pat it down. And I think it's just going to be like, I'm imagining right now in my head that you're going to look really chic in this interview. I'm going to be like drowning in fabric. And I was like, I'm just going to give up trying to have ladylike legs. I'm just going to sit like this. So
I'm just imagining all the exciting things that can happen underneath the circus tent.
I've actually got like horny rats.
I mean, we've got elephants, we've got fire performers, we've got aerialists swinging from nipple to nipple.
Squirrels with rainbow tails that have like been given the right kind of party drugs.
Definitely. They're jumping through the flaming hoops.
Woo! All right, please go on about your trauma.
Yeah. And so the heaviness was pervasive. And I was told because of my family history that there was depression in my family. And so I had a chemical imbalance in my brain and I was going to need to go on medication. And I did go on medication for one period of my life. And during that time, I'm a huge proponent of utilizing medication during periods of despair and hopelessness as a way to part the clouds and see a potential light at the end of the tunnel. Totally. Because for me, the hardest thing about experiencing depression wasn't the feeling of being depressed in that moment. It was the feeling like, oh, I am this way and I'm doomed to feel this way forever. And so being able to part those clouds just a little bit gave me the motivation I needed to take care of myself in new ways. And so I trained at my college to be an aerobics instructor. And so I was working out just like a mad woman. And that was what really helped me. And then since then, I've been able to utilize my depression as my teacher and actually allowing myself to have the deep emotional processes. I was so good at staying in control. When I was younger, that was what was asked of me in my home environment, was just to stay in control no matter what. That I call it the Gmail skip the inbox filter. My emotions would completely bypass my conscious awareness and get archived somewhere in my body. I wasn't aware of that at the time, but by the time I was in my early 20s, I was just so heavy and sad all the time. And so when I realized I needed to process that emotional energy and get it up and out of my system, I first had to learn how to feel my emotions again. And so I went to a bunch of therapists that I think maybe thought I was a sociopath, asking them how to feel my feelings. No one really had a good answer for me until I found Tantra. And it was accessing where the energy got stuck in my body was how I was able to re-access the emotion.
See, I got sent to a spiritual psychologist when I was, I think like 21, 22 years old. And she was like, what do you feel in your body? And I was like, bitch, I don't feel shit in my body. She's like, no, what do you feel? And I was like, don't feel nothing below my neck. And I was very lucky that she was inviting me to actually connect with my feelings. And to your point, like when you have enough trauma, it's like you just pack it all away. You don't actually have a sense of feeling anymore. And I also thought I might be a sociopath for a little while because I was like, I don't feel nothing in here. And then after I cracked it open, I was like, whoa, there's like tsunamis of emotion and experience in here, exactly as you're saying. And I think it's important to say that because I think there are a lot of people who feel numb and shut down and like they don't sparkle in this life. And I've seen that anyone who does the work and starts feeling their feelings actually sparkles. They come alive.
It takes a minute though.
Oh yeah, longer than a minute.
First, there's the experience of, oh yeah, now I know why I was overriding all of this because feeling this is really intense and uncomfortable. And I also, there was a part of me at that point that once I had kind of crossed over that threshold of this is what needs to happen, I need to actually go into the darkness. I knew it was the right thing. And I remember so many times of just that feeling of this is a bottomless well. Am I ever going to reach the bottom? Is it ever going to stop? And maybe I should just shut it off again. But there was a deeper knowing that wasn't the case. But oh my gosh, I have so much empathy for people in the earlier part of that journey and how I use the analogy of surfing a lot, right? So we're in the ocean and sometimes emotionally, I feel like I'm able to, I'm sitting on the board. Maybe I'm in a great meditative state. The waves are kind of coming and rolling underneath me, but I'm not big enough that I need to catch them. I'm just kind of enjoying the sunset. And then you've got the waves get a little bigger and I'm like, okay, I know how to surf these waves, right? I'm rocking it, surfing it, I'm enjoying it. I can, go into that the bliss is any emotion fully felt, like I'm there. And then the waves get a bit bigger and all of a sudden they're crashing down on my head and then I'm coming up for air. There's another one crashing down on my head and I'm just coming up for air. And those are the moments. Those are the moments where I wonder, what the heck am I doing here? Am I ever going to get through this? And those are the moments where the greatest gifts come through on the other side. I just stay in there, stay swimming, stay treading water, figure out how to get my head above and ride it until the next one.
Yeah. And that's why emotional tools are so essential, right? Because emotional tools are not only having a surfboard, but knowing that you can surf and knowing that you can get better at surfing, right? And I think when people lack that, that's when emotions are so terrifying. And to your point, which I think is so compassionate and beautiful, my moment of cracking open my feeling was I felt numb during sex, didn't really have orgasms, numb during sex. And I started to go to kind of coaching therapy at the time for my sexual abuse. And I remember just like numb. And then one time it was like the whole ice thing broke open and I felt the most revolting disgust I had ever experienced. It was like skin crawling. It was like fetid. It was like if you'd put like 12,000 ancient maggots and let them rot inside of my body. And all of a sudden it just all came up like coursing through my body. And I literally threw up over the side of the bed. That was the first time I'd ever like purged before. And I wasn't familiar with it at all. And I was like, oh, that's what I thought the numbness was. Like it was actually such an excruciatingly uncomfortable feeling. And the reason I think it's so important to articulate this is I know so many people who still feel so numb and they think something's wrong with them because they're numb, but actually the body is very intelligent. And if you are in an unhealthy home environment and the things that you're experiencing are that hard, your body is wise enough to say, actually, we're not going to feel this. And what you're saying is so true that like at first it can feel so bad that like I was also like, oh my God, can I put this back in the Pandora's box? But also I don't want to. Right. And I think we also came of age when this stuff was less articulated in popular culture. And I do think there are better tools now to be able to do it in a more resourced way. And at the end of the day, I think learning to feel your feelings, especially if you had a difficult childhood, takes so much soul courage and like you can do it. But it is as horrible as you say.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, because there are a number of moments still when I'm trying to push myself past some pocket of numbness or some resistance that I'm feeling within myself. And it just doesn't come. And then months later or years later, I actually do get into that space and I realize that I genuinely wasn't ready to go there before. And so exactly what you're saying, right? The more tools, the more resources we have, the more quickly, the more efficiently, the more effectively we can work through this unprocessed emotional energy and coming back to trusting, especially for those of us who, were trained a lot to be in our minds and to work as quickly as possible with our minds. One of the more challenging things for me has been trusting the pace of my body because it is so different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a humbling process. I feel like in some ways I've come so far, and sometimes there are moments where I'm just like, holy hell, like it's been like how long now? And I still want to close and not open my heart to love. Come on now, heart.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm excited to take a moment and share with you about the VITA Coaching certification. This program has been around for almost 10 years, and it is my highest offering. The sexual wellness industry is forecast to be a $125 billion industry by the year 2026. Why is this? Because people are more ready than ever to express their sexuality and build deeply connected, meaningful relationships, and also, obviously, to have the most outrageous orgasms and erotic experiences of their lives. But most people are never taught how to do any of this, how to have extraordinary relationships, how to have the sex they really crave. They're looking for qualified, confident professionals to teach them. And my VITA Sex, Love, and Relationship Coaching certification is a powerful 1-year professional certification that's helped more than 2,000 coaches make their way to becoming incredibly successful and highly paid sex, love, and relationship professionals.
But this program doesn't just train you in every aspect of the coaching process so that you can build a successful online business. VITA Coaching will also walk you through the personal transformation of a lifetime, because the best coaches have done the work themselves. You'll discover so many transformative techniques like breathwork, meditation practices, self-pleasuring tools that you'll apply to your own life first, and then you'll use these same proven tools and techniques to get laser-focused results for your clients. We also hold an exclusive live embodiment retreat just for VITA Coaching students and alumni every year. In this retreat, you'll experience 7 days of live teaching with the VITA teachers and I, and really refine your skills as a sex, love, and relationship coach. So if you feel called to claim your spot in this multi-billion-dollar industry and transform not only your own life, but the life of so many others around the world, you can join me inside the VITA Coaching certification now at laylamartin.com/VITA Coaching. That's laylamartin.com/VITA Coaching, VITA. Well, when we were talking about the multitude of things that we could talk about in this interview, you wanted to talk about embodied intelligence for men. So you've really specialized in working with men, although you now work with people of all genders. And so pray tell, what is so important about embodied intelligence for men? What is it? How do they get it? Why do they not have it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I specialize in working with people who've been incredibly successful in their careers and have struggled to match that success in their personal relationships. Mm. And what I find is the common theme among everyone I work with, men and women, is that we are trained so much to be in our minds that we are disconnected from the intelligence of our physical bodies. And so I use a lot of somatic modalities, which, I'm sure many of your listeners are familiar with, but just in case, is anything that teaches people how to recognize their emotions as physical sensations in the body. Mm. That skill set, compared with the idea that we know that a huge percentage, it's hard to know exactly scientifically because it's the unconscious and it's very difficult to study, but we estimate around 90% of our decisions are made unconsciously. So 90%, that means that 90% of our reality on a daily basis and over time is being shaped by these unconscious decisions. So what I find is that most of the people I work with are in a place, they've gotten to a point in life and they're wondering, how did I get here? This is not what I thought I was working towards. I was focusing on these achievements. And now the biggest theme is that I'm lonely. Either I was married, it didn't work out, and I've gone through a divorce, or maybe I never found someone that I wanted to build my life with, consider a life partner. And so the process is utilizing this skill of recognizing the emotions as physical sensations in the body to access the unconscious through the body and be able to make more and more of the unconscious conscious so that we can then have agency over the world that we're creating. And for myself and most of my clients, that really means our personal relationships.
Mm-hmm. And what would a practice look like where you start to make, let's say, a piece of the emotion conscious?
Yeah. So the first practice is, I call it learning the language of the physical body. So when we're learning language, we learn very simple vocabulary first. And I like to learn a yes and a no. Mm-hmm. If someone is able to recognize their emotions as physical sensations in their body, they can go towards a practice of asking their body questions that they know the answer to. Mm-hmm. So is this a yes or a no? And feel what a yes feels like in the body, what a no feels like in the body. So a great way to do this is to imagine I'm sitting at a table in front of my favorite meal. Mm-hmm. And I'm such a huge yes to digging into that meal. What does that feel like in the body? Mm-hmm. Versus, someone just put down a plate of something I really don't like in front of me. Maybe it's my least favorite food. And I, maybe feel physical sensations of wanting to move away from the table, of tension.
Sea urchin sushi, just so we're clear.
I will dig into your sea urchin sushi. So tradesies. And if people struggle to recognize the physical sensations in their body, because this is very, very new and unusual for the vast majority of people, and that's completely normal, is to just start with a body scan meditation. 5 minutes a day. Start at the top of your head and just start to train your mind to be paying attention, not to just to what's going on externally, not just what's going on with your mind and your thoughts, but actually what's going on in the physical sensations of the body. So what happens when you sit in meditation? What do you feel? Do you feel any clenching in your stomach? How open does your heart feel? Is there clenching in your neck and shoulders and your jaw? And then what happens throughout your day? If you get really good news, what happens in your body? Someone cuts you off in traffic, what happens in your body? And just starting to notice those things can give you information in personal relationships, not just of what's going on unconsciously, like I'm having some sort of contraction or I'm wanting to run away from the situation because I'm afraid. But it can also give you a lot of information about when you're triggered before you're consciously aware of it, which is such a big part of the game in relationships, and being able to have a meta awareness that I'm triggered in this moment and not make a reactive decision from that trigger, but actually be able to step away from it. Sounds simple, but those of us who have tried it know.
I'm like, for some reason, like trigger space for some reason is like moth to a flame for me. And like Babak is really good at being like, Layla, no good can come of this. Like that's literally his phrase. He's like, no good can come of this when we're both in this state. And there's something inside of me. He's like, but I want to. And so I've had to learn the deep art of, yes, I am in trigger, meaning that my emotions have taken over my reality to such a degree that they are shaping how I think and feel in this moment, not that what I think and feel is aligned with my deep truth. It's aligned with my more, I'd say, stable state, open-hearted way of being. So the things that I will say or do in that state are like, you know, Psychoville, like they're not true to what I really think and feel. And so I've had to train myself to not be mesmerized by those experiences. And I've really thought I'd be interested in your perspective on this. Like, I feel like one of the reasons I'm mesmerized by those experiences is there is a part of those, some of those parts of me still long to be fully met, but they're longing for my partner to meet them. And actually the really deep key is for me to meet them. So those trigger moments are these tremendous gifts because they're parts of me that have still not received the love, care, and attention that they desire. But the way that I cycle and have cycled is by being like, oh, here's this insane part of my pain or anger or fear. And I need my partner to see and understand it and hold it right now, rather than what I've been working very deeply on in my own relational work and my own relational trauma, which is how can I actually take that signal to be a deep calling home to myself? Like, how can I meet this part of me and be with this part of me rather than trying to get something from someone else in this state, which is very different than being in a resourced state and being like, I would like my partner to show up for this conversation, show up for this sexual experience, show up for this part of me, right? And I think sometimes, I know for me, it was easy to conflate the two. I want a partner that I feel safe around, that I can show all parts of myself to. And it's reasonable to ask my partner to be able to show up for resourced parts of me and be able to love all the parts of me. But I can't responsibly expect a partner to hold the most unintegrated, pained parts of me, nor necessarily should they if I can't show up for those parts of myself.
Yeah, it's a very complicated question, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily binary.
Yeah.
It's not just I'm fully resourced and I'm asking you to hold this perspective or this younger part of me. And it's also not necessarily just I'm in my wildest, most triggered, F you. So there's so much room in between. And there are a couple of different thoughts around this that I think are interesting that have impacted me. One is this idea of this work that I've done through the Avalon lineage with Tom Slater, which is that in most, relational wounding is healed in relationship. And so we hear this, people can't love me until I know how to love myself. And we're human beings. We learn how to love ourselves from the people who have loved us. Mm-hmm. So it's really this yes and of how can I receive experiences from people who love me and my community that help me actually know what it's like to be met in this thing. Because if we just tell someone who has never been met or seen in their pain to hold themselves in their pain, that might be too abstract. Mm. And being able to have some examples of being held by a person in your pain is so incredibly important and valuable. And at the same time, one of my dear sisters gave me this quote from Contact Improv, where the responsibility in Contact Improv is, if someone's going to lift you up, let's say I'm a woman and I'm working with a male partner, if that male partner is going to pick me up and lift me up and do some kind of trick, it's actually my responsibility to know how to safely fall. So it's not his responsibility to not drop me. It's my responsibility to only get into those more complex acrobatics if I have done the work to know how to safely fall out of it. And so I think of that way with emotional work as well too, which is, okay, how can I create space and be open for my partner to meet me in this moment, possibly in a new way, for me to be open to being held in a way I've never been held before? And how do I know for sure that I've got myself if my partner's not ready or available for that in this moment?
Yeah, I do think that's such an important nuance, right? Because I felt like for myself, I was very beautifully held by my male partners in my life. I've had that as a tremendous blessing. And I think to your point, like I was loved in a way, especially by my first boyfriend, that was beyond anything I had known. So it left this imprint of what was possible, that I even could be loved that way, that I could experience devotion of that level, which is such a tremendous gift to receive. And one of the things that I ended up learning, because I had, my long-term partners really desired to hold me, like they really desired to show up for me. There was something in my pain body that wanted them to show up for me so that I didn't have to fully show up for myself. And so I do think it's so nuanced that some of us can show up for ourselves so deeply, and actually letting other people show up for us, or letting other people spin us, or letting ourselves even be willing to fall while someone else is there is so incredibly important. I feel like one of the things I really learned about my pain body was that it wouldn't actually come to rest in my own arms until I stopped trying to get someone else to heal it for me. And I do think that it's still something that I'm kind of exploring, that very exquisite dance of being met and received, but also being so willing to be so stable and unconditionally loving for all the parts of myself.
Yeah. So, my brain loves to break things down into steps.
Yeah.
And this might be a massive oversimplification.
No, let's break it down into steps.
I think of it in 3 stages.
Yeah.
So the first stage is codependence.
Yeah.
Codependence is, I need you to do this thing for me. I need something in you to complete me. I'm not complete on myself. That's obviously massive oversimplification for this conversation, but for these 3 levels. So that's level 1. Level 2 is independence. Level 2 is, I got me. I don't need other people in order to be okay. That's what we all aspire to in American culture. Super, super independence focused relative to other first world countries. And then we wonder why so many people feel isolated. So what I would love for us to really be focusing on as a society is, what does interdependence look like?
Totally.
What does it look like to be a full sovereign being, to be able to know how to fall, to be able to know that I've got me if I need me, and to be able to lean on each other so that the whole can be greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that deep interdependence, that ability to be interdependent, my experience of it has been that was actually some of the most painful and deep work I ever did, was the ability to be in relationship with others and the ability to show up for myself relationally with others. Because I think when people think that they have to do everything themselves and they have to be really independent, it's very unlikely that they're showing up for themselves with a deep, abiding love and connection to self. I feel like that's still evidence of alienation of self. But once you come home to yourself in this like really deep, really epically loving way, it's like, for me, then when I would connect with people, every place inside of me that ever felt unsafe, unloved, unseen, it's like it starts to show up relationally. And to be able to love those parts of myself was literally the deepest, most painful work I think I ever did in a lifetime of fairly painful work.
Yeah, absolutely. for me, it has to do a lot with just simply the control piece.
Yeah.
So the independence, the nice thing about the independence, and I totally agree with what you're saying around, how it's another protective way, is that when I'm on my own, even if it's not exactly how I want it to be, I'm making all of it the way that it is.
Yeah.
Coming into interdependence and really coming into those relational experiences and not just needing to be okay with things being out of my control, but actually really understanding that's a feature.
Yeah.
And not a bug.
Turns out you can't control people.
I mean, it turns out you don't actually want to.
No.
Because if you do, you don't get their magic.
No.
But the place to get into where you get their magic is really a scary trust fall.
Yeah. It's one of the most vulnerable places, I think, inside of the heart, to finally feel like I'm just going to let people be. Like, I can give them feedback. I can give them the feedback of how I am around them, but I'm going to fundamentally let go of some sort of agenda to change how people are. And it's like I simultaneously feel like an energy activation and opening in my body, and this like fear, because they can do whatever they want, but that was always true. It's like the control was some sort of like lying to myself that somehow I could make people love me, act the way I wanted to, stay with me, not abandon me, all of that. And I think to sit in this letting people be what they are is to also sit in the openness and the truth that they could always hurt or leave or be the most loving, wondrous people ever. And that giving up control is actually to just finally be honest with myself that I was never controlling them.
Absolutely. All I was doing was controlling myself in these ways that I thought would make myself more lovable, but ultimately just seeded disconnection between the people that I could have been connected with if I was more authentic, and created connection between people who were connecting with this sort of created version of me that wasn't actually me. So there's just all this distortion through all of those connections. And I'm still in the process of really trusting myself to just be fully myself and know that that will draw in the people that I'm meant to draw in, and to really be okay if I am too much for some people or not enough for other people, and know that there's 8 billion people on this planet and I couldn't possibly be friends with all of them if I wanted to.
Well, what's interesting is that very piece that you just articulated. I have seen so many couples who have been together for a very long period of time or married for 20 years. One couple comes to mind in particular where the woman said, I have dreamed of the perfect husband my entire life. And I realized that I already have him. And while there's such power sometimes in leaving relationships, as we both know, or owning that deep no, like just knowing that that's the truth, I often think in that articulation where you said, if you're trying to control people, you don't ever get their magic.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many relationships, actually, people don't actually know how magical their partner is, because we've been so programmed to engage in this kind of subtle social control with each other.
Absolutely. And we're oftentimes looking for clues that we're safe. And if we don't have that foundation that you were talking about of knowing that I'm safe and I've got me no matter what, we actually don't have the structure to build off of to create those bridges with other people's magic. And so it's one of those things. It's simple and yet the most infinitely complex concept that there is, because humans are so infinitely complex, and what that actually looks like and what that actually means for each person is so different.
Well, let's keep exploring.
Yes, please.
I'm going to be super real with you. I realized that the number one thing I want in my life is to feel good.
right? An amazingly happy life is built on feeling good inside of the nervous system. Those are some of the most challenging feeling states to achieve when we're being bombarded by emails and screen time and overwhelming to-do lists and career and family pressures. And to reset the nervous system to be in its natural state of pleasure and play, that's right, nature actually wanted us to feel pleasurable, playful, sensual. It takes work. Research has shown it can take up to 2 hours to switch from go mode to deep relaxation, where you want to connect and feel good. If you're like me and you don't have 2 hours at the end of the day to meditate, to do yoga, then supplements and plants can actually help your nervous system to feel the ways that you crave. If you're interested in supporting your nervous system to feel the way that you most desire to feel, then go ahead and check out our mood line to shop the entire mood product line and unlock the pleasure you crave.
I'm here to let you know about one of my favorite practices, orgasmic breathwork. So what I've done is I have made 2 different audio guides for people of all genders to train you in how to use breathwork to have more orgasmic sexual experiences. So this breathwork trains you to get out of your head, into your body, to be able to expand pleasure from being localized in your cock or your pussy or intersex genitals into the whole expanse of your body, and to be able to orgasm stronger, longer, and more powerfully. So orgasmic breathwork is one of the most powerful tools that I've ever come across, and you can learn it in a 10-minute guided audio. So you can get it totally for free by downloading it on my website. You can head over to laylamartin.com/orgasmic breathwork. That's laylamartin.com/orgasmic breathwork. You can also find the link down in the show notes. I'm so excited for you to try this practice. It's truly revolutionary and is one of the fastest ways to experience what I'm talking about throughout this podcast, which is a deeper, more potent, more transcendental sexual experience.
I'm so excited to tell you about my sexuality training for men. If you have ever wanted to take your study in Tantra and advanced sexual mastery to the next level, then this training is for you. More and more men are waking up to the fact that there's a whole next level of confidence, pleasure, and power available to them when they step away from relying on things like porn and fantasizing to drive their sexuality, and instead begin to approach both life and sex in a more primal, present, and embodied way. I know that those are the kind of men that I feel most drawn to, but releasing the stories, negativity, and stagnant energy that hold you back from becoming a truly exceptional lover requires what I call the holistic tools of sex. These are practices like breathwork, energy activation, sounding, mindfulness, and movement. So I designed this 7-week men's sexual mastery training to train you in all of these tools so you can shift your psychological and energetic approach to sex. This allows your body to last longer, allows you to have multiple orgasms without ejaculation, and to experience flow states during sex. This is all done through powerful 20-minute practices that you can do once a week or daily if you desire. So if you've wanted to train yourself in a program like this to take your sexuality to a whole new level, join me in the Men's Sexual Mastery Training at laylamartin.com/MSM. So I'm curious about anger, right? Because anger can be one of the most toxic emotions, right? And it can cause serious harm interrelationally. And when people repress their anger, they can also lose their power, their ability to assert boundaries, their passion in some ways. Like anger can be a very healthy response to a boundary being violated. And so I'm curious, what have you seen specifically with men about how they can work with anger in such a way that it's a gift rather than a poison?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I are both avid students of Alison Armstrong. And one of the important things I learned from Alison Armstrong is that men are the physically stronger sex, and women are constantly walking through on a day-to-day basis wondering, am I physically safe? Am I physically safe?
Yeah.
And so men's anger can be destructive and has been destructive and is still destructive in many, many ways. And we have a tendency as a society to oversimplify, to see that there's a part of something that's bad and say we have to take away that whole thing. We have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And in reality, there's so much difference between when someone is fighting against and when someone is fighting for.
Mm.
And we need the energy of fighting for what we believe in. So how do we actually sift out the fighting against, which can also just look like a young tantrum in an adult man's power, like physically powerful body, versus that energy of the warrior who knows what he stands for, knows what he's willing to fight for, and isn't willing to back down. Mm. To me, the difference is, how do you work with your anger? Because we live in a society where, and especially in spiritual communities as well, anger can be seen as sort of a weakness or a spiritually less desirable state of being. And so the incentive is to repress. I just am not going to go there. I'm going to stay in control of my anger. And of course, we know with repression, it comes out in weird ways, either externally or often it implodes. So we see people who just attack themselves on the inside with self-persecution and incredibly violent, aggressive, negative self-talk. And that has its own destructive consequences. So I really, really encourage my male clients to have, for a lot of them, a daily practice. People kind of tune into what feels right for them, but of expressing anger in a healthy, safe way. So taking a baseball bat to their couch, taking a baseball bat to a punching bag, punching, hitting pillows, screaming, yelling, any of that stuff in a space where either the other people in the house know what's happening and have consented and aren't scared, or they're in their own space. And I will tell you, Layla, I have seen now repeatable results in the experiments I have done of given to some of my clients who have the most heavy, dark clouds over them, or they're out in society and they're just, women are not going near them because they don't feel safe. There's all this unprocessed, kind of angry energy there. And somewhere between 3 to 6 weeks of this practice, and my clients come to me and they say, oh my God, so many women just asked for my phone number last night. I went on this trip. Women would not stay away from me. There's a frequency shift that happens when the unprocessed emotional anger is let out and transmuted.
Gentlemen, the key to being magnetic to the hottest woman is to beat the shit out of your couch with a baseball bat.
Amen. I will tell you, I had no idea. This was sort of a experiment I started doing years ago with my clients of just knowing that it's healthy to release emotional energy. And I knew it was going to be good. I had no idea how good the results were going to be. I mean, these men come to me and they're so stuck in themselves and looking for all these external reasons why they're not able to connect with women. And yeah, we talk about other stuff, but the common theme is that 3 to 6 weeks of punching the heavy bag, hitting the couch with a bat, and all of a sudden they're being swarmed.
Totally. Well, as you said, men were meant to be warriors, right? So if they're repressing this anger or having it come out in really unintegrated ways, it's not going to feel like power. It's going to feel like the bad kind of, like the creepy kind of danger, not
Exactly.
The good kind of like I like how Om Rupani says, you want your man to be a killer, but you want him to be a killer for you. Right. Like, so there is this energy of like, it's like exactly as you're saying, it's like a compacted darkness rather than like a fully embodied warrior. And so to me, that's also having the ability to be conscious through your emotions rather than completely overwhelmed by them. And no one ever teaches men how to be conscious through their emotions.
When the anger is in the shadow, it's not trustable. So either it's going to come out in these weird, messy ways, or it's not going to come out at all when it needs to. So I don't trust you to be able to show up and defend me. And that's really tough. It's really tough because I know a lot of men who they're afraid of being seen as a villain, or they feel there's this part of them, that warrior part within them that they know has the capacity to destroy. And they're afraid of people seeing that and being scared by it. And what I really want them to know is I have a friend who says that everyone knows everything. So on an unconscious level, everyone knows everything. So anything that you're trying to hide, people already feel it and they already know it, even if they can't necessarily articulate it or speak to exactly what it is. But there's a felt sense of there's something not trustable here, and I'm going to move away from that.
Yeah.
And as soon as it's brought out into the light, as soon as it's reclaimed, as soon as it's moved up and out, I mean, come on, what's sexier? Someone who is avoiding any conflict or someone who knows what he wants and is willing to lean in and do what is needed to get it? Of course. Of course. And I say that for every woman as well. You know, like this part I've been working with in my own masculine energy of being empathetic, being compassionate, really hearing and seeing and feeling where someone is at while holding the boundaries of my own truth and being able to say, I completely understand why you feel that way. I hear you. I'm with you. It's totally reasonable to be upset in this moment. And can I share my perspective of what happened and what I'm seeing? And being able to see the way people actually relax into that. Because for years and years of coaching training and different things that I was doing, really focusing on just empathizing and hearing where people were at and all of this, there's beauty in that. And I also saw the ways in which there was almost an enabling element where the emotions would just kind of spin and spin and spin. And being able to balance the empathy with the healthy pushback, the healthy boundary of this is what I'm willing to take responsibility for and this is what I'm not. I have really seen the way that creates safety.
Beautiful. I love that. So actually first, let's have some mood.
Yes, please.
Sensuality and sex magic is my like temple practice or ecstatic dance combination.
Ooh. And it tastes so good.
I truly love it. I'm excited to tell you about my 6-week self-pleasure training, Obliss. This is the first course I ever made, and it has been going for over 10 years now. Most of us are never taught the tools required to create deeply rooted self-love, which not only leaves us feeling disconnected from our bodies and ourselves, but what a lot of people don't know is that a foundation of self-love is crucial to building the deepest connections and experiencing the most ecstatic pleasure with others as well. My 6-week sexual masterclass for women, Obliss, trains you to have the ultimate orgasm and fall deeply in love with yourself and your body. You'll heal your sexuality, address old wounds, face things like fear, guilt, shame, and shutdown, and be able to heal and integrate them, and discover how to access the deepest, most profound self-love. So whether you're just dipping your toes into the magic of Tantra, or you are a seasoned sacred sexuality practitioner, you can use Obliss to expand your pleasure capacity and to access the most exquisite self-love. You can join Obliss today. You can get started right away at laylamartin.com/Obliss. That's OBLISS, O like orgasm, and then bliss, laylamartin.com/Obliss. Okay, so we've got some rapid fire questions about male clients, which is specifically like a lot of men feel scared of approaching a woman because they'll be perceived as creepy. What would you say to those men?
Yeah, I think it's really tough right now, right? There's a lot of men being stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to hitting on women. And most of the men that I know really don't want to do anything that's going to make a woman feel uncomfortable. And so they have a tendency to overcorrect to just not acting because it's hard, even as at any time, it's hard to risk rejection and to make that move. And right now, I think it's even more difficult than it's been in the past. So what I always tell men is that usually just walking up and talking to a woman, there are always outliers in every situation, but that's not what's going to make most women feel uncomfortable or upset them. It's walking up with an expectation or agenda where a woman feels hunted. So if you walk up to a woman and you're thinking, okay, I got to figure out how to get this woman to go home with me, she's going to feel that back to the everyone knows everything. And that's immediately going to put up her defenses. If you go up to a woman with the energy of, this woman intrigues me. She's beautiful. She looks interesting. I'm just curious to get to know her and learn a little bit about her. More likely that's going to be received with openness as well. And then what I also find is that women usually don't get upset because a man came up to them one time. it's usually because a man's either not reading a situation well, so not reading the body language that the woman's not interested, or she says no and he doesn't honor and respect that. And it's difficult because a lot of men are taught, don't take no for an answer, especially men who are in sales or any of that type of culture of just go after what you want, go after what you want. And we really have an opportunity as a society for women to be more open and honest when they're interested, because sometimes there's this game of, oh no, I'm going to make him come after me again and again and again. And also as men to cultivate the ability to read more subtle and nuanced body language and signals. So yes, open and honest verbal communication is ideal in many scenarios. And sometimes women feel nervous. They're not able to say that, or they just don't want to for some reason. And so what I really encourage men to look for is she interested and engaged as you're talking with her? Is her body faced towards you? Are her eyes on you? Is she smiling? Or does she seem uncomfortable? Does she seem like she's trying to back away a little bit? Does her body language look closed off? Is she looking around the room like she's waiting for someone to rescue her? And just take the hint, right? Don't take it personally. Rejection is protection. Just know that this wasn't aligned and this wasn't the right one. And say thank you. It was lovely to meet you, and move on to the next one.
Yeah. It's like creepy is just really a word for not attuned.
Yes.
Right? Like not
or I
attuned
have
to
a
me.
really intense agenda.
Yes. And I have a very intense agenda regardless of what you want.
Yep.
Right? Like creepy is like, I'll take something whether you want to give it or not.
Right.
Right? Because I think intense agenda can be hot if the other person wants the intense agenda, you know? So I think creepy is really like they have an intense agenda and they're not taking any signals that I don't want it or I'm not interested. So
yeah. And I'll add one more layer to that, just back to the having our own foundation of safety. There is definitely a theme with men of needing a woman to find them attractive for validation. And that is not the most sexy, attractive energy to put that out there. I need you to like me so that I can like me is not going to really help you connect with the women probably that you want to be connecting with. And so if that is a thing where you find that you are really struggling with your sense of self-worth, if women are not receiving you or wanting to go on dates with you or wanting to sleep with you, that's a huge opportunity to work on that piece so that you can genuinely and honestly walk into a scenario with an open heart and a curiosity about that person, not needing them to do something for you.
Yeah, there's like a Taoist teaching. I'm going to paraphrase it here, but it's like when you have nothing to lose, the whole universe opens up to you.
I love that. Yeah.
And that is a place you actually get to through healing. Because you're no longer telling yourself the story that you need the world around you to give you something so that you can feel worthy or attractive or lovable. And while that sounds very esoteric, it can become so real. And that really frees you to just do what the hell you want. Because it's like, I might want to have sex with this person, let's say, but if they don't have sex with me, my sense of worthiness, my sense of self-love, my sense of being an amazing human is not on the line, right? And that's where it's like, you can have desire, but actually feel very, very free in the way that you are engaging with people.
And I'll run it through an even little bit more practical frame, which is, okay, I have this need. Let's say we use the previous example of if this woman sleeps with me, then I'll feel validated. But that's a small little hit of feeling validated. And if I actually have a wound, there's a hole in my foundation. So that energy that's coming into me by this woman validating me and wanting to be with me is then leaking out of that hole. And I need to go get another hit. And so back to everyone knows everything. If people are tuned in to healthy energetic dynamics, they're going to feel that. And they're going to feel I can pour energy into this person and it's just going to leak out. People might not be able to articulate that, but they're going to be able to feel there's something that's not trustable about what's going on with this person. And so I'm going to protect my energy in a really healthy way.
Yeah. And it's like you sometimes exactly as you're saying, it's not that conscious. It's just like this person is like, for me, like sea urchin sushi. I don't know why. And I think one of the things that breaks my heart doing so much work with people over such a long period of time is that I will often see in some people, they think there's something wrong with them, but it's really just, you haven't looked at that piece. You haven't integrated that piece, and it's making you behave in such a way that Layla is experiencing sea urchins sushi and Starielle is experiencing God knows what. Starielle, what food do you dislike?
Oh man, I'd have to think about that for a minute. I like most things.
You like? Well, I also don't like beef stroganoff, just so we're clear. I ate it once when I was a kid and I was like, never fucking again. So anyways, beef stroganoff and sea urchin, raw sea urchin. That feeling, it's like there's nothing usually inherently wrong with the person. It's exactly as you're saying, there's something that is going on energetically that people are reading that they can't or don't articulate usually, or sometimes they do articulate it, but instead they're just acting repulsed. And so I would say that repulsion is like, if you feel like people are repulsed, not coming alive around you, shutting down to you, that's such an opportunity to actually look at yourself. What is it that I am doing socially? How is it that I'm showing up? And having this assumption that everything you've been trying to hide or repress is actually not working in your favor. Because I love this phrasing that everybody knows everything. So it's like, if you're spending your whole inner world trying to shift yourself or change yourself so that you can get a certain reaction from people, usually it's some sort of direct healing that's actually required.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a hole in the foundation. And we can't build a big, beautiful structure of relationship on top of a foundation full of holes.
And what is one of the number one problems that you address with men over and over?
So the biggest one is the repression of emotions. But what that is actually a solution to is the more frequent concern that I hear of there's some external reason why I'm not finding the partner that I want. I hear all the time, oh, there's no good men or there's no good women in San Francisco or in LA or in New York. And it's obviously comical, right? Because there are so many people in those cities that, first of all, of course, you have not met all of them. Right? It's silly to imagine that.
My friend did get to the bottom of her Bumble stack in Los Angeles. She did have a few of the settings on, so it wasn't like every available human in all of Bumble in LA. She literally was like, I got to the bottom of the Bumble stack, and she dated like a CEO. She literally had like spreadsheets. She went on, I think, like 200 dates in a single year. It's crazy. She got to the bottom of the stack, and her man, the person that she's still with 7 years later, was the second to the last at the bottom way. Bumble stack. So you're like, until you've been to the bottom of the Tinder stack or the Bumble stack, or God knows, right? Like, you cannot say.
Well, let's see, because correlation doesn't necessarily imply causation, right? Like, maybe there was something she was doing in that process of dating, going on those 200 dates that helped her come to a place where she was actually ready to meet that person. Because that's the direction that I'm going in is back to the repulsion thing that you were saying. Is if there is a dynamic that's unhealthy going on within us, then we're going to attract someone who matches the other side of the unhealthy dynamic, right? So let's say I am needing just a huge amount of support. Like, I'm not taking good care of myself. So I then attract someone who has a big thing around nurturing or healing or saving or rescuing me. But that's not a particularly empowering dynamic. It sort of works in a way because we're unconsciously wanting the same things, but it's an energetically draining dynamic ultimately. And so what I often find is the concern is, there's some external reason why I'm not meeting the person that I want to be with. And actually, there are internal ways that we are blocking ourselves because we're afraid of losing ourselves in intimacy, or there's some sort of peace within us that needs to be worked. Maybe there's some anger that needs to be released. Maybe there's some self-care, whatever that is.
Couch is looking too peaceful.
That's right. And what that ultimately creates is a much more empowering reality, frankly. It's easier to look outwards and blame, oh, this is the reason why. But isn't it more fun if we can actually do something about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what do you think is the main thing that you've seen clients do to become more magnetic to the people that they want to be magnetic to?
I mean, for men, the anger thing is a big one, but it all comes down to like emotional intelligence is so sexy right now. And learning how to recognize the emotions as physical sensations in the body, bringing the unconscious into conscious awareness. I mean, they're little things, but they open up these infinite worlds that we've been talking about. So when I start paying attention to the physical sensations in my body, all of a sudden I have these extra data points on how I'm relating to my surroundings. And then I start noticing, oh, when I'm on a date with this woman, I'm tensing up, but it's not because I don't like her, which might be the original thought. It's because there's this thing that she does that reminds me of my mom. And then I have an opportunity to look at that with a whole different perspective of, is this something that I want to call in and work with on this dynamic? Or is this something I'm actually ready to be a no to? I'm working with a client right now who had really hypercritical parents, and we just did a whole ritual around him really making a commitment to the universe of, I'm a no to someone who's going to come in and be hypercritical of me. And any sign that that's what's happening, I'm going to hold a really strong boundary around it. And so without intentional and thoughtful paying attention to the dynamics that we are experiencing, we will create the relationship that we had with our parents and or the relationship that our parents had with each other. And there are some elements of that that are beautiful. And there are some elements of that that we actually get to iterate on in this lifetime and do differently moving forward and model something different for our children. But we don't know what those things are unless we slow down and we pay attention, mostly to the physical sensations.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for this work that you're doing. I know it's such a gift to people, as you said, like who they work so much in these lanes of achievement and realize how little that matters if you aren't deeply prioritizing relationships as well. So showing people how to love and be loved is such an enormous gift.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm curious, actually, if you would just share a little bit about your experience of VITA Coaching and having done it. I think, did you do it in 2019?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
I was in 2019 cohort.
Yeah. What was your experience of it?
I was profoundly impressed at the level of thoroughness in that training. I cannot imagine receiving a more comprehensive training in any school or any university, specifically around all these concepts. I mean, a bunch of them that we've been talking about today, right? Everything from being able to recognize with more nuanced detail the physical sensations in my own body, doing all the personal work in the first 6 months. And then the way that one of the things that I think is really incredibly valuable that you provide, that I know a lot of people in the coaching community who want to become coaches really need and maybe aren't aware that they need it, is these templates for coaching sessions. And so especially when you're getting started, you give people these phenomenal tools, these phenomenal exercises that are really useful and really helpful for pretty much any client, and a way to sort of kind of sift through and figure out what to do. And when you're a new coach starting out, having that builds so much confidence, and having a healthy structure and container around the session, I think helps clients feel so much more safe that you know where you're going with them next. So I recommend this all the time to friends of mine who want to come into the coaching space, because it is truly excellent. And I know when I meet someone, if I'm looking to work with a coach or I'm referring someone, that if they've gone through the VITA coaching program, they've had really sophisticated education around both the Western science and the Eastern modalities. And it's such an incredible weaving of all these different modalities. The people who helped me the most when I was in the earlier stages of my personal growth journey were people who had different tools in their toolbox, who had different modalities that they could work with me, depending on where we were going. And every VITA graduate comes out with all of these different modalities, all these different tools in their tool belt. Plus, the way that you help people hone in on their niche and really give a profound understanding to business and marketing. I still think about a line in one of your trainings where you say that when you found your purpose or you found your niche, it feels vulnerable. And I think about that all the time because I have these moments where I step more deeply into what I'm meant to be doing and it feels vulnerable. And I've seen what happened with my friends as well. And I quote you on that all the time because it's so true and it's so supportive. And there just aren't that many people out there that are teaching us things like that. So I know that if anybody goes through the VITA program, they're going to come out, even if they're already a coach. In fact, a few of us have talked about just how powerful it is for coaches that are already coaching to be able to really up-level their skills. Everyone I know, their business increased, their level of confidence increased. They were able to work more and more with the clients that they wanted to be working with. So I recommend it all the time.
Oh, thank you. That was gorgeous. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So in terms of your amazing work, how can people work with you, find you, connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on my website, StarielleHope.com, Instagram at Starielle Hope, and I'm also on TikTok at Starielle Hope.
We'll include all of that in the show notes. So you can go ahead and check that out. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all the magic and play and so much more.
Oh, thank you, Layla.
Thank you for listening to This Tantric Life. I am Layla Martin. This is the home for the realest conversations about sex, spirituality, polarity, conscious relationships, and all kinds of topics that help us live the absolute most incredible lives. Please check out the next episode. Please go ahead and leave your rating and review on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. It's so helpful when you do that. If you want to stay connected to me, the most helpful supportive thing you can do is to head over to laylamartin.com, sign up with your email address. That connects you to me if you want to study deeper with me, if you want to receive my deeper teachings. I do it predominantly via email. Finally, you can check me out on Instagram at @the Layla Martin. And thank you so much for being here.